Here in a small town in western Pennsylvania called Apollo, you feel like you're back in the old America of the 1850s. It is said that Johnny Appleseed came right down this road in front of my house, planting apple orchards and teaching the frontier families how to survive. My family has deep roots in this beautiful part of our country. Just up the river, the Kiski River, is a small steel mill town called Vandergrift. And in Vandergrift, my great-grandfather, Mr. Waddell, set up the first Ford dealership in western Pennsylvania, Waddell Motors. He actually met Henry Ford. This is a town full of families, full of traditions, and great pride. As Edmund Burke, the great British conservative, once warned, all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Evil can come even into the smallest town, into the nicest family. It can invade your life. It can even invade your body in the form of a lethal form of cancer and a slow and horrible death because of something someone brought into your town and close to where you and your family live and they work. In 1957, a nuclear physicist from downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, actually from the Squirrel Hill district, the Jewish neighborhood, a wealthy neighborhood of Pittsburgh, came out to this area. His name was Zalman Mordecai Shapiro. And he and a Mr. Lowenthal, another Jewish person, came out and began exploring this area as a site for the production, supposedly, of nuclear fuel. They created a corporation called NUMEC, Nuclear Materials and Equipment Corporation, NUMEC. Their patriotic cover story was, "We want to provide nuclear fuel for the U.S. Navy." But in reality, they were here to produce material for a foreign military power in the Middle East. They were here to produce enriched uranium for the Israeli atomic bomb. Within 10 years, 600 pounds of enriched uranium had disappeared from the NUMEC plant. And radioactive waste was being dumped all over this area and in one specific location further up the river in Parks Township, Pennsylvania. I'm here in downtown Apollo, across the street from the Heritage Hotel, formerly the Chambers Hotel. It's a historic old location, and there's a very nice bar downstairs. I met a truck driver in there who told me he used to deliver to the NUMEC plant here in Apollo Borough, that is the town of Apollo, just down that way. And he told me that the truck CB radio and his truck FM radio used to actually go off when he was coming through the gates of the NUMEC plant in downtown Apollo. That's how radioactive he felt the conditions were at the Apollo Township location.
It was a job that we thought we were going to move on, and everybody was happy that they was working, because they was working with nuclear fuel and working for the government. And after we got a little wiser, older and wiser, why we realize what's going on now.
Well, the nature of the beast is you can't see it, smell it, taste it. And since there was no emphasis placed on it, even the little bit of training you had when you went in, you thought, well, what am I getting into? This was all brand new at the time. You have to remember. These people, I and all these other people needed jobs.
You needed a job.
You needed a job.
to work.
There's no work around here.
And it was you didn't make a whole lot of money.
Buck and a half hour.
Buck and a half an hour.
That's what we swear
But you
about.
had that $90 every week coming in, So that helped out a lot, just because you had a steady job. Well, I came from down at Allegheny Level because I was laid off all the time. So I ended up working there and just stayed there for 10 years. Then they were going to sell out, and they told us we could get another job. They hated to see us go, but they didn't have a buyer yet. That was in '71, so that's when I went to the coal mine. Ended up in there for 23 years.
It was nothing but an old steel mill. They come in, remodeled it, but it still had the dirt floor, and it was colder than heck in there in the wintertime. And as soon as we left the front entrance to the place, we had to put on lab coats and they called booties, covers over our shoes to walk through the place. And the place was, after you got down through the plant, it was saturated with acid. And half the guys come out with their shoes burned off of them. After a couple months of work, their shoes would be eaten off of them. And then I was transferred down to the plutonium plants in Parks Township, and I thought I was walking into a palace. It was clean and nice and everything, but we still didn't know the danger of the place.
In 1965, working at N.U.M.E.C, we had predominantly plutonium and uranium that we worked with. The plutonium was contained in glove boxes and the uranium was in the open atmosphere. There were no controls on the workers. We didn't understand what we were dealing with at that time. We had, again, things in the open air, and we worked in glove boxes. The glove box was a plastic plexiglass cube with rubber gloves in it, and you handled the toxic materials, the plutonium, with the rubber gloves like you were working with it on a shop bench. So you had all the hazards of a shop bench. There were pointy things, there were sharp things, there were jaggedy things, and quite often, on a daily basis, little holes would perforate the rubber gloves you were wearing. And you would come in and out of the glove box many times during the morning, and the only time you monitored was when you were leaving the facility. They had a little hand monitor there when you were leaving the fab area. And many times at that area, people were caught with contaminated hands, contaminated forearms, contaminated shoes. Then they were sent to the decon. But that entire morning when you were working with that contamination.
Well, I was working below Richmond with that fuel called Mike. And he would smoke, and he'd laugh right on where the dust was, yellow like.
He's dead too.
Yeah, he'd lay a cigarette on that. And I'd say, Mike, don't smoke that cigarette when you're laying it in uranium. Oh, he said it won't hurt you. And you'd blow that off there.
Yeah,
And
that's what it did. A lot of people. Well, I didn't think it would really.
yeah, a lot of people do.
Bother you,
Especially if it was low and rich, they figured you were safe there.
I was never involved in a giant major incident like a glove box explosion. I was contaminated many times. Glove would get perforated. Sometimes you knew the glove got perforated. You pulled your hand out and you knew that now your hand was contaminated. So you went over, they had a little room. You went over and you washed your hand. If that didn't get it off, you contacted health safety. They may put potassium permanganate on your hand. They would dissolve potassium permanganate crystals and make a liquid out of it. You would dip your hand in this potassium permanganate. It would turn your hand purple. You would leave it on your hand for 4 or 5 minutes. I think 2 minutes is the max recommendation now. But at NUMEC, there wasn't a guideline. After it was on, what it would do would oxidize a layer of your skin. Then you would dip your hand in sodium bisulfite, which would neutralize potassium permanganate, turning your hand back to its normal color again, also taking off a couple layers of skin. If that didn't work, they would put a rubber glove on you, tape it to your wrist, and then you would sweat the remaining plutonium out of your pores.
My hands were so contaminated. They used this. You remember that stuff they used? Permanganate?
Yeah.
That purple stuff?
Right.
They washed my hands for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And never got them done.
We're here in the shopping center area of downtown Apollo. We're here to talk with people locally about KI pills, the potassium iodide pills.
The State Health Department is handing out potassium iodide tablets to people who live near nuclear power plants.
There are 5 nuclear power plants in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and routinely the government offers people potassium iodide pills in case something were to happen, a nuclear mishap at one of these atomic power plants. Now, here we've already had an atomic disaster. There's a 20% higher cancer rate here than in just across the river in Westmoreland County. The question is, why are people completely unaware, as it seems to me, that they can take potassium iodide pills because of the danger of radioactivity and getting cancer? What's your first name, sir?
Timothy.
And you're a native of Apollo?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of the NUMEC and the nuclear waste problem?
Yes, sir. I am aware of having issues down here and a lot of people getting sick in the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever it's been. Yes.
Are you aware that there's a 20% higher cancer rate here than in Westmoreland County, which is right over there?
Yes, sir. I am aware of that.
Have you heard of this program to give people these so-called KI potassium iodide pills?
No, I haven't. I don't know anybody who's taking them. I don't know where they're getting them from, if they are taking them. I don't know a thing about them.
Yeah, it's sort of hit and miss. It was a brief news item and then it was gone.
I read 4 newspapers a day and I missed it.
Right. Are you aware that the state government is offering potassium iodide pills to people who live in radioactive areas?
I never heard of that.
We have all 5 nuclear power plants, including over in Beaver County. They just offer you potassium iodide pills. Now, we've actually had a nuclear problem here. Yeah. It's not just if it happens, but it has happened. What's your first name, ma'am?
Carol.
Carol, you're familiar with the NUMEC nuclear waste problem?
Yes.
Okay. Have you lived in Apollo most of your life?
Not actually Apollo, but in the local area.
Local area. Do you have any family members who've gotten cancer?
Actually, my mom and my brother have both died from cancer.
Both your mother and your brother. May I ask how old your mother was?
59.
59 years old. That's too young.
Yeah, 45.
Your brother was 45 years old?
Yes.
I see. Did they work in NUMEC or did they work here in the local area?
They worked in the local area.
I see. Were you aware that Armstrong County has 20% higher cancer rate than Westmoreland, which is right over there?
Well, I wasn't sure of the percentage, but I know everybody you talk to, someone's got cancer.
Were also aware of a program with the federal and state government to give people potassium iodide pills?
I didn't know anything about that.
Everybody who lives within 10 miles of the 5 nuclear power plants in Pennsylvania, including Beaver County on the other side of Pittsburgh, can get free potassium iodide pills in case there's a nuclear disaster.
Okay.
Now, we've already had a nuclear disaster. And has anybody offered you potassium iodide pills?
Nope, this is the first I heard of it.
In 2003, I was diagnosed with a bladder carcinoma. I had that treated, spent a few days in the hospital, recovered from that bladder tumor.
Well, it started out in '88. I had a right kidney removed, and then in the early part of the '90s, I've had 3 heart attacks, and then I moved up on into '96, had the bladder and prostate taken out, which was cancerous, and somewhere in '03, I had a triple bypass, defibrillator, pacemaker, and that's about it with me. And I'm one piece yet.
My name is Gary Walker, and I'm 67, and I worked in the plant for 30 years. Started in 1959. I got hurt in '83. After '83, my kidneys quit, and I was on dialysis for 2.5 years. Then I got a transplant for 13. After the transplant, I got cancer, and I'm waiting right now for another. I'm on dialysis again. I've been on for 3 years, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 in the morning to 11, and I'm waiting for a kidney right now.
Yeah, I had my paperwork turned in on July 31st of '01. And we had a lot of paperwork. I have a stack of paperwork down there. It must weigh 30 pounds. A lot of it, I've spent my own money to, well, all of us, we spent our own money to pick up our medical forms from the hospitals and doctors. They charged us $1 a sheet to have things made up. And we've been getting phone calls back and forth, and the NIOSH would send me updated programs of what's going on. We made many phone calls, and they just kept passing the buck too.
This is the high school football field of Apollo Ridge High School. On the official website of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the NUMEC plant, it is stated that the size of the contaminated dirt just at the Parks Township waste dump site is the size of is 24,300 cubic yards. And they themselves compare that to the size of a football field, which is of course 100 yards plus 2 end zones. That means that we're talking about a football field size of contaminated dirt 12 feet high, consisting of plutonium, uranium, thorium, and americium. All this was dumped by the Israeli-controlled N.U.M.E.C Corporation, and all this has to be taken away at taxpayer expense, and the current estimates are it will cost between $150 million and $500 million. This is the main N.U.M.E.C site in downtown Apollo. Today it's a scene of devastation, weeds. It's been this way now for decades. you look over here, you can see a steel structure rusting that's left. It raises the question why it would take decades to clean up a site when, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I quote from them in this document from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, NUMEC, Nuclear Materials and Equipment Corporation, predecessor of current owner DWX Technologies, conducted disposal of nuclear waste materials in accordance with Atomic Energy Commission regulations. So if NUMEC was disposing of radioactive waste in accordance with government regulations, why, after decades, has no one dared to clean it up?
And it looked like a growing, good place to go to start a career. And you got your little bit of training. You went into the facility with a little bit of apprehension, what am I getting into here? But when you went in, it was very friendly. There were no regulations, there were no people bossing you around. You got into the facility and you became friends with people. The longer you stayed there, and the less restrictions that were placed upon you, is an everyday thing. You reported there 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Nobody got sick, nobody got injured. For the most part, there were a few little accidents, but everybody looked happy. Little did we know the contamination was on you and in you, and on your shoes, and on your pants.
After we got down there, what was floating through with the plutonium in the air. And so we was actually dumb about it. We didn't know it. And the people there, some of them knew it, and they never told us. So after all these years, why, this is what's happening to us. Now the place is all tore down, and here we are trying to move on.